Our brains are just absolutely wired to love a good story. I mean, it's how we make sense of the world, right? But what if that love for a simple, compelling narrative is actually getting in the way? What if it's stopping us from seeing things as they really are?
All right, so to get a handle on this, let's dive into a story we all think we know. It's a modern corporate legend for sure, the story of Google.
I mean, you know the characters, right? Two brilliant, super creative grad students just tinkering away at Stanford with this absolutely massive idea.
And their big idea, well, it wasn't just another search engine. No way. It was a fundamentally, radically better way to navigate the internet. I mean, it pretty much left all the competitors just choking on their dust.
And from there, every step of the way, from finding the money to launching the products, it just seems like this perfect, unbroken chain of brilliant decisions and flawless execution. It's a story of pure genius, plain and simple. So yeah, it's a fantastic story, right? A perfect tale of talent and vision. But, and this is the big but, this is where we have to stop and ask ourselves a really important question. What if the story itself is the problem? What if its beautiful simplicity is exactly what's leading us astray?
And that question brings us right to the core idea we're going to unpack today. It's this incredibly powerful mental trap, something called the narrative fallacy.
Okay, so this idea comes from the writer Nassim Taleb, and the narrative fallacy is all about our irresistible urge to create these neat and tidy stories to explain things that are actually super messy and complicated. It's like we're trying to take the chaotic reality of the past and clean it all up into a simple bedtime story.
So what makes one of these good stories so tempting? Well, here's the recipe. They're simple, they're coherent, they focus on things we can picture, not abstract ideas. And here's the kicker. They give a huge role to things like talent or even stupidity, but they almost completely write luck out of the script. They zoom right in on the few dramatic things that did happen, while totally ignoring the countless things that almost happened or could have happened, but just didn't.
And here's the dangerous part. When you hear that clean story of Google's rise, it starts to feel, inevitable, like it was always meant to be. This illusion of inevitability completely hides the gigantic role that pure, dumb luck and random chance played at literally every step of their journey.
This isn't just about the stories other people tell us. It's also about the stories we tell ourselves, how our own minds actively rewrite the past. And that leads us to something called the hindsight trap.
Oh, you definitely know this one. It's that classic I knew it all along feeling. You felt it, I've felt it. After an event happens, our brain literally tricks us. It makes us believe we saw it coming way more clearly than we actually did. It's a systematic distortion of our own memories about what we believed before.
And check this out. This is a perfect example of it in action. Let's go back to President Nixon's historic trip to China in 1972. Before he went, nobody really knew what was going to happen. People were super unsure about all the possible outcomes. But, and this is the crazy part, after the trip was over, researchers asked people to recall what they had predicted. And suddenly, everyone remembered being much more confident about the things that actually happened. It's like their brain just went back and edited their own memories. Hindsight literally rewrote history in their heads.
And this is where it gets really dangerous. This quote from Daniel Kahneman just nails it perfectly. The core of the illusion is that we believe we understand the past, which tricks us into thinking that the future should also be knowable. We get overconfident.
Okay, so where does all this lead in the real world? Well, it has huge consequences, especially for how we judge people's decisions, their performance, and their leadership. Yeah, because of hindsight, we fall right into something called outcome bias. This is where we judge a decision based entirely on its result, not on whether the process behind it was sound. Think about it. A surgeon could make a brilliant, by-the-book decision that has a bad outcome because of bad luck, and we blame them. Meanwhile, a reckless gambler can make a terrible bet that pays off, and we call them a genius. It's all backwards. And this ties directly into another bias, the halo effect. It's this idea that our overall impression of something, like if we think a company is successful, casts a halo that makes us see all its individual parts in a positive light, like, say, its CEO.
Okay, get ready for this, because this is wild. Studies show that when a company is successful, we describe its CEO with words like flexible, methodical, and decisive. But if that very same company starts to struggle, that exact same CEO doing the exact same things is suddenly described as confused, rigid, and authoritarian. The only thing that changed was the outcome, but our entire perception of the leader flipped.
So,
After all those stories in business books about heroic CEOs, you have to wonder, what's the actual measurable impact of a great CEO on a company's success? Well, when you look at the data, a, let's say, generous estimate puts the correlation at just about 0.30.
So what does that number, 0.3, actually mean? Well, let's put it this way. If you were to just flip a coin, you'd have a 50-50 chance of picking the more successful company. A great CEO bumps those odds up to about 60-40. Now, don't get me wrong, that is a real edge. You'd take those odds in Vegas any day. But it is nowhere close to the superhero destiny maker story that we're so often sold.
Okay, so what do we do about all this? How do we actually start to see past these simple, seductive, but ultimately misleading stories?
Well, we have to start by acknowledging a powerful force that pretty much every simple success story ignores. It's called regression to the mean. And all it really means is that luck, both good and bad, tends to run out. If you have an extremely good result, the next one is likely to be a little closer to average. And if you have an extremely bad result, same thing. Things tend to pull back toward the middle.
And if you want a mind-blowing real-world example of this, look no further. A famous study looked at Fortune magazine's most admired companies. And it found that over the next 20 years, the stock returns for these most admired companies were actually worse than the returns for the least admired companies. How is that possible? Well, it's regression to the mean. The most admired companies were at the peak of their good luck, and it had nowhere to go but down. The least admired had a string of bad luck, and it was bound to get better.
So here's a little mantra, something to keep in your back pocket. The next time you're looking back at a decision, yours or someone else's, and you're tempted to judge it harshly, just tell yourself this. The mistake appears obvious, but it is just hindsight. You could not have known in advance. So I want to leave you with a final thought. A challenge, really. The next time you hear one of those perfectly neat, simple stories about why a company succeeded or why a project failed, I want you to pause. I want you to ask yourself, okay, but what part of the story isn't being told here? What about the role of pure, simple luck? What about all the things that didn't happen? What's been left out to make this story so clean?